welcome back to What the Hype. And hold on to your corsets or cravats or both, dearest gentle readers, because this week we are diving into the world of Netflix's Bridgerton. No worries if you're a newbie. That's what we're here for. We're here to initiate you and get you set up for all the info you need to know to start this fantastic show. I'm Pamela, and I'm here with Laura and Micah. And we also have a wonderful guest joining us this week. We have Natasha Polis, who is a podcaster, a social media extraordinaire, and a Bridgerton super fan. So thanks so much for joining us, Natasha.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm a massive fan of Bridgerton. I'm so excited. So thank you for having me.
That's why we're happy to have you here, because you're going to be a big help as we navigate this fantastic world. So do you want to tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself and kind of what you do online? As we said, you're a friend of the show, so we know you, but they might not.
Yeah. So I've been a content creator for 10 years. I own my own influencer management company, and I am the co-host of Those Forking Fangirls with Christine Riccio, who is an author. I started my journey as a reader, and I claim Twilight as the sole purpose of why I'm here today and why I have the career that I do. I love romance and fantasy and historical period dramas, and in my spare time, I make gowns. So I think it all just kind of comes together in creating this like fantasy romantic life from my own self. But you can find me at Natasha Polis everywhere on the internet.
Fantastic. So before we get into the main discussion here, I wanted to take a minute to go around the table here and ask you all to tell our listeners how familiar you are with Bridgerton. And you can do this by telling us how much you've watched as far as the multiple seasons that are out goes. And you can also tell us like what varying degree of a fan you are, so that we can all just kind of get familiar with that before we kick things off.
I can jump in. I feel like I might be like the newbiest of noobs on this panel when it comes to Bridgerton. And it's not because I didn't know about it. It's just I haven't really had a chance to check it out. But because we were doing this and because I knew it was something I wanted to get to eventually, I was like, perfect timing. So I said, I'll sit down and I'll watch like the first 2 or 3 episodes so I can be ready for this primer episode, and immediately fell in love. And now I'm almost done with season 1 and very excited to get to season 3, which is where I understand some really fun stuff happens that we won't get into here. But I also saw that there's like a spin-off series on Netflix as well. And that got me excited because I feel like I'm going to be well fed when it comes to like my romance, like period drama for at least the next several weeks. So check in with me once I finish everything, or like midway through, and I'll let you know how it's going.
Oh, we will. How about you, Micah?
I'm not really sure how to classify myself because I feel like I found the show during the pandemic and watched both seasons that were out. And I candidly recall a whole lot. So it was good for me to go back and watch the first 2 episodes in advance of us doing this show. But it's starting to come back to me, I will say that. And why I was interested initially, I think, was just because of all the buzz about it. I felt like it was something that I needed to turn on and watch.
Nice. So, Natasha, we've already established you're a super fan, but what was it about this show that really kind of made you know that you were going to tune in when it dropped?
Oh, I mean, I heard early hype about it. I think because of Shonda Rhimes. I didn't know that they were books beforehand because they came out, you know, when I was really young, so I wouldn't have had the chance to know about the hype. And I knew it was coming to Netflix and that Shonda Rhimes was actually going to have a show with like legit sex in it. And I was like, yes. And I knew it was going to be a period drama. So, I mean, I am upset. My favorite movie of all time is Pride and Prejudice, the 2005 version with Keira Knightley. And I have seen every adaptation of Jane Austen. Regency romance is my thing. So, I mean, it was crafted for me, I think. I literally just came back from New York from the Bridgerton season 3 premiere, and I got to see the first episode. So, this is my like favorite show of all time. Like, it has It's Unseated X-Files, and I rewatch it an embarrassing amount of times, like maybe once a month. I think it marries just the beauty of Regency romance, which is just the barest essence of two people falling in love amidst all their adversities. And it's just, I love the modernism of it too. I think they do it quite right.
So I feel like you and I are cut from the same cloth in a lot of ways, including Bridgerton. We share a lot of things in common. So I'm kind of just like you. As soon as I heard that it was a Shonda Rhimes production and that it was going to be Regency era, and also the Julie Andrews factor. I love Julie Andrews, and she was going to be voicing this mysterious Lady Whistledown. I was like, man, Regency era Gossip Girl, I'm there. I'm so invested already. And it definitely delivered for me. So like you, I've just been, waiting for new seasons every year. Yeah. And
it's just constantly being rewatched just because I just need more.
You see that endorphin hit.
You said like you're going to be well fed from the show. Listen, you will be, but you still want more.
Oh, I'm sure. I already feel this way now because I'll be watching episodes before bed and I'll get to the end of an episode. It'll be the last 5 minutes and I'll be like, okay, after this, bedtime, gotta go. But then I finish the episode and I'm like, I can't go to bed. I have to keep watching this.
True marker of a good show. And I think a lot of people would agree with you here, no matter where they are on their journey. So moving things along here, one thing that we like to do at the top of these primer episodes is kind of give you all a nice little overview of what the title is about. And so we're going to kick things off by telling you a little bit about Bridgerton in case you don't know. As Natasha already pointed out, it is a television show based on the best-selling book series by Julia Quinn. And it first premiered on Netflix back in December 2020. So I think a lot of people like Micah really tuned in during this lockdown period where we just wanted something nice to watch. And this filled the void for a lot of people. It is also produced by Shonda Rhimes' production banner Shondaland, and Shonda Rhimes is the mastermind behind TV hits like Grey's Anatomy, How to Get Away with Murder, Scandal, and so many other shows. So that was definitely a big draw here for a lot of people.
And as also mentioned, the series is set in Regency-era London and follows the 8 Bridgerton siblings as they navigate London high society in search of love.
It's narrated by Lady Whistledown, the mysterious scribe whose gossip papers detail the salacious details of what's going down during London's social season. And it's also known for being pretty steamy.
Another driving force.
Yes, can confirm.
Mm-hmm.
As with any show, there are terms and kind of vernacular that you kind of need to know to set yourselves up for success. So you want to keep watching. And I pulled a few here that I thought might help newbies. And Laura, you can chime in as well and let us know if there are any other terms that you need help navigating as a newer fan as well. So the first one I have here is Diamond of the Season or Diamond of the First Water. And this is a title bestowed upon the hottest debutante of the season. In season 1, it's Daphne Bridgerton. And you definitely want to be the diamond because that basically guarantees you'll find a good marriage match, which is a big theme over the course of all of the seasons of Bridgerton.
Yeah. And is it getting into spoiler territory for us to talk about like what denotes who the diamond is? Do we not want to go there?
I don't think so. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, it's basically decided by the queen, right?
Yeah. So it's interesting you mentioned that. Yes. Natasha, go forth.
So actually, the first diamond of the season ever is Daphne. It's Lady Whistledown who determines who the diamond of the season is because she writes it down. So it's not
That's true.
the queen is like, she just says flawless, my dear, to Daphne in the first episode. And that she kind of has the queen's favor, but it is Lady Whistledown who kind of determines who would be the diamond. And you can also see that in the second season too, and in the third.
although the queen would like you to believe it's her. So
Okay.
you're on the right track.
You are.
And yeah, the queen is also just kind of like this, similar to Lady Whistledown. She's kind of lording over the whole season, figuratively and literally.
Yeah.
So it makes sense
Mhm.
that that was your thought process.
Yeah. Well, it almost comes across, and maybe I need to rewatch it, but it almost comes across as though Whistledown is following the Queen's lead here. But I guess you could actually say, I mean, I guess it is the other way around. Maybe, I mean, at that point, do we know if the Queen's been reading any of those columns?
So the first column comes out after the debutantes, walk and see the queen. And then the first time we see people reading it, I think, is with the Bridgertons. And I call this like the Wendy scene because Daphne looks just like Wendy in this scene where they're like getting together and it's all like the sisters talking. Yeah, so that's the first time. And I'm sure the queen is reading it at the same time because she's very invested. But I don't know if we know that in the first 2 episodes.
Okay.
I do say, I really love how this mystery, though, kind of permeates throughout at least the first season.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's part of what hooked me in, is because I really love a good mystery, and especially a mystery in London. So this idea that there's this person out there who's chronicling the lives kind of behind the scenes, but nobody really knows who this person is. I think, there's something to that, doing a little detective work, trying to figure out as you watch each episode, can you catch on to see who done it, so to speak.
Yeah.
That's what makes the rewatch fun.
So it's no surprise she wrote How to Get Away with Murder, right?
Yeah, she's well primed.
Yeah. Did you know that Shonda actually wrote Princess Diaries 1 and 2?
Yes.
What?
I just
didn't
saw
know
that in an interview.
Yeah. I just watched it on the plane ride home and I was like, what?
I thought you were going to say she actually got away with murder, but that would be
Well, maybe.
I don't know. If she can write it, maybe she can do it. I don't know.
So the next term here we have is the ton. And this is just a term used to describe the whole of London's high society. So most everybody that you meet that's from a noble family is considered part of the ton.
I had to pick up on this one through context clues. Like the first few times they said it, I was like, what are they talking about? And then it eventually became clear when you heard it used enough. But I was like, what? Did they mean town?
Yeah, it's all those accents. It's like, is that supposed to be something else?
Yeah.
It's actually used a lot in Regency, like romance books. So it's a term that a lot of Regency romance readers do know. I don't know if I don't know. I think it was used historically. I'm not quite sure. So don't quote me on that.
Well, speaking of historical terms, I also wanted to go through some titles of nobility and their rankings, just 3, because I think these are the 3 most important ones to kind of catch on to while you're watching. So the first one is the Duke. And this is the highest ranking title of nobility that anyone can have that's below a king. So in Bridgerton, Simon is the Duke of Hastings. So anyone who marries him would be seriously leveling up on the social ladder, which is why he's such a hot commodity, even though it's kind of much to his chagrin. The next term here we have is the Viscount, and this is another nobility title that's bestowed by the crown. And this is below a duke and an earl and a marquis, but above a baron and a lord. And this is somebody that historically had legal duties, such as presiding over a jurisdiction of a county. And in Bridgerton, Anthony Bridgerton is the Viscount, which is why the Bridgerton family has such high standing among the ton. And then the last term here we have is a baron, and this is the lowest ranking title in British nobility. And this is important because Penelope's parents are Baron and Baroness Featherington. So she's another main player here, but her family is still ranking lower than the Bridgertons. And that kind of gives you a good idea as to why the power moves and power players operate the way that they do over the course of this series.
Can I ask, though? I'm kind of curious now, just looking at this, and Natasha, you may know, is there anything to the names themselves, right? When you're talking about nobility with Bridgerton, because with Featherington, when you Pam, when you were talking about them being the lowest rank, I started thinking about like a feather and if there's any kind of like lower class connotation there.
Ooh.
Oh, I mean, I'm sure Julia Quinn, who's the author of the books, wanted to maybe play on the name as itself, because I don't think it has any ties to the lower class, but possibly could tie into because they're at the bottom and that's kind of wishy-washy. It's kind of established that, they're not the most important. Even in the first scene when you're watching it, the Featherington, Lady Featherington and Lady Bridgerton are like walking down the steps with their debutantes, and like Lady Featherington like waves to her all like, happy and nice, and then Violet Featherington or Violet Bridgerton is just like, hi. So I think they have been trying to like climb the ranks for a long time, but I don't know if they necessarily can get up there.
Yeah, and I do feel like you can note the differences between these families in terms of like their social rank, just based on these titles alone. And it's nothing, it's not coming from a place of judgment, but it's like you can definitely observe that like there are differences in clothing that's worn. There are differences in customs that different families have. Like the way that Penelope's mother communicates with her children is pretty different from the way that Mrs. Bridgerton communicates with her children. So it is pretty clear that there are these like social tiers, even from just the first episode of the show.
It was my days as the person running the name origin section of BuggleNet, I think, just kicked in. So,
I mean, that makes sense. I think it's interesting because in most like period romance books, we do follow people within high society. But then a lot of media that we watch, which is set during this time period, which is like the Napoleon time period, you can tell by the way that the women are dressed. It's Regency, it's the Empire waistline. We don't necessarily see people of titles. Like if you look at all of Jane Austen's works, no one is a duke, no one is an earl. They're all maybe like Mr. Darcy's just Mr. Darcy. He's not Lord Darcy. He's not Viscount Darcy.
Right.
So this is one of the first times we're seeing London high society during the Regency period of this time. So if you want to think of like lower class, you can think of Jane Austen's works. So it's like Sense and Sensibility, Pride and Prejudice, Emma. Those they're set during the same time, but just not high society.
Okay, so we have two more terms here. The next one is rake, which is basically Regency era's version of a modern day player, or a man who indulges in vices and generally avoids romantic commitment. This term comes up a lot in season 1, and you'll hear it used as an insult to kind of disavow any claims of gentlemanly behavior as well as the series progresses. And then the last term I have here, I put in because if you exist online and Bridgerton is on your radar, you're going to be hearing this term quite a lot right now. It's Pollen, and that is the ship name for Colin Bridgerton and Penelope Featherington. So again, especially important for season 3. So if you're wondering why
it doesn't really work the other way. To be fair, that's the only way it could have worked, right?
Yeah, what would the other way
Penelope.
be?
Yeah,
Penelope.
Penelope.
That does sound like a very like whimsical, maybe like constellation,
Oh yeah,
but Pollen is adorable. So
I think Nicola Coughlan just made like a joke on it on like Seth Meyers or something. Like someone like sneezed and she goes, "Oh, are you okay?" He's like, "Oh, it's just pollen season."
Yeah, that's the only kind of pollen season I want, honestly, is somebody with bad allergies. All right, let's move on to some hot tips that I want you all to keep in mind if you're newbies. The first one is that the 8 Bridgerton siblings are named in alphabetical order from oldest Anthony to youngest Hyacinth. So that's a little easy trick to kind of keep in mind the birth order, which mostly is just important so you know who's kind of on the precipice of being on the marriage mark. So it's just a good little rule of thumb there.
I actually had to invoke this at the premiere because I was like, wait, who's next? Anthony, Benedict, Colin.
Not to say they don't go out of order, but it is just so you kind of like know. And also just because we're talking about like nobility titles and stuff like that, the birth order is important, especially for sons. So like the first son gets the title, right? And the second son also gets a little bit of kickback from that, but the third gets some money, but none of like the glory. And the last little thing to keep in mind here is that every season is based off a different popular romance trope. So that's a nice little modern touchstone if you're a rom-com fan to kind of keep in mind and, kind of suss out as you watch these seasons. And just for funsies, I wanted to ask if we're rom-com fans and if anyone has a favorite trope or has caught on to the trope for season 1.
I'll take a stab here, but it seems to me to be we're going to pretend to like each other to get through our current set of circumstances, but ultimately end up together in the end trope. But I think Natasha did a much better job of summing it up in 2 words than I did.
Fake dating.
Okay.
But you got there. You had the spirit.
I was processing.
Yeah. I didn't know what tropes were a while ago, and now I'm very well versed. So it takes a while, though.
I will say I definitely have caught on to the fake dating trope of it, but based on their initial interactions between Daphne and Simon, I thought it was going to be enemies to lovers. Was going to be the trope.
Yeah, I could see that
we were going to get, but
I think there's a lot in the first season of different tropes because it's like at first they are bickering. There's lots of banter between them. And then it's the fake dating ploy. And then it turns into something else. So,
best friend's brother. That's another popular trope in romance. Or brother's best friend. That's the one. Brother's best friend. So as we mentioned at the top of the show, we all did watch the first 2 episodes to prepare for this chat. And so there are some very minor spoilers just for the first 2 episodes of season 1, but not too many. So feel free to go forth with confidence as you keep listening to us talk about Bridgerton. To kick things off, Laura, since you're the newest to check this show out, I wanted to know if what you experienced while watching it was different than what you thought Bridgerton was going to be before you even went into it.
I don't know that I expected it to be terribly different from what it is, but I will say the writing is, I think, just better than what I thought it was going to be. And I don't mean that in a dismissive way towards the show or towards the genre. I just hadn't been that exposed to it. And what I had seen of it had just been like little clips here and there. So I just really didn't have much frame of reference for it. I definitely went into it with the closest thing I could associate to the story and the time period being Downton Abbey. So I was like, is this going to be like Downton Abbey? And I like Downton Abbey. So I was definitely open to it. But yeah, getting into it again, I was really taken in by the writing. The acting is great. And I mean, it's going to be maybe a weird thing to say. It's very luscious to look at. Like it is beautifully shot. All of the scenery is gorgeous. Like you feel like you could reach out and like touch it. It's just that lush in the way that everything is portrayed.
I think it's very interesting that you had that thought too, because I think most things that come from a bodice ripper romance are not necessarily taken seriously, and they're not given the treatment actually ever. So this was the first of its kind, and it honestly like started a revolution, and it started like people wanting to read these books and not be afraid to talk about them too, and go on to read others like it. because look at the art that it created. It's just huge.
That's a really good point, because I think that like when you think about bodice ripper romances, that you think about like those are books your mom probably bought at the thrift shop or like at a gift shop while you were waiting around for something. It's not really like a lot of things that are kind of geared towards women or female presenting people. They're not taken as seriously as some other titles out there that are more unisex, if you will. So yeah, it's really cool that you noticed that. And I think that like Shonda Rhimes really kind of did again lend some credibility to what this ended up being, because her shows, while they do feature strong female leads, are kind of for everybody, because they're very much procedural dramas on cable television. So they're tailor-made for anybody to tune in and watch, even out of context. How about for the rewatchers on this panel? Was there anything that you kind of noticed on, revisiting these first 2 episodes?
Micah, why don't you go?
Yeah, mine is 2-part. The first was, I thought you were all talking about the writing. It does a really good job of showcasing certain things that didn't age well, but then counteracting them with a more modern twist. And I'm thinking specifically of when Daphne is about to be attacked, and her knight in shining armor is about to get there, but boom, she hits her, this person right in the face. And it just, maybe I'm not reading that situation right, but it's almost like she can take care of herself. Mm-hmm. She doesn't need this knight in shining armor to show up to help her in that moment. And there are other little things that I noticed throughout the course of the first 2 episodes. I'm curious if you all feel the same.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you have to be really careful with romance and adapting it nowadays, because there's things that we can read in the privacy of our own home, that gets published, and we're like, yes. But then when it's built for a broader audience, like those things can be picked apart, and people don't necessarily understand why they would be in those books. And one, we had to remember that this was published like before the Me Too movement and all that. So I'm sure they had to do a lot of modernizing. There's also like Anthony really tries to take charge, but he's not the one in charge. It's Mama Bridgerton.
Yeah.
And
that was the other moment
Yeah.
that I was thinking of too, where she just like puts him in his place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the complete kind of opposite end of this, I was paying a lot more attention, having watched season 2, to Lady Whistledown, where they were, what they said, who they interacted with. And I hindsight is always 20/20, right? But I do think this show does a good job of leaving clues of good camera work, things like that.
Yeah. I was doing the same thing as you. And I think that it is, I've done that before too on other rewatches that I've done. And it is really interesting to see how they do that in a way that's subtle enough. If you're watching for the first time, you're not probably going to catch on. But if you're rewatching it, you realize that they do a really nice job of leaving those breadcrumbs for the people that have no context for it. Mm-hmm. Obviously, book readers who've read through Julia Quinn's entire series know who it is, but I had not read a Bridgerton book before watching the show, so I had no idea.
Yeah. I still have not read the books, even though I do know a lot about them. It's because I want to be surprised reading or watching these shows just because they're so good. And I think I would like to go back and maybe read the first book and then Anthony's story for season 2. But I think also the fun part is, which I didn't know when you're first reading it, is that every season is one of the Bridgerton's love stories. And I think it's fun now that I've seen the first episodes of season 3, even knowing that some of the other characters in the background are actually going to have their moment to shine later down the line. And it's fun to know that like Hyacinth and Gregory are going to grow up in front of our eyes and actually like have a love story. And I don't know if they're going to get an actor switch out because actually one of the actresses for Francesca, she's the one who comes after Eloise. The actress got switched out because of, I think, schedule conflicts, but she has a much larger role in season 3. So it was actually fun to watch the first 2 episodes and watch her because she's just kind of in the background. Like you don't even notice her. And then I think it's always just going to be fun to watch what Shonda and the writers and the showrunner have done with these other characters which are going to have their spotlight later down the line.
Mm-hmm. And going back to the mystery aspect that I know Micah said he really enjoyed, that's kind of another fun aspect of it too, is if you're trying to figure out who's kind of getting primed to maybe go next in the following seasons, because they switched up the order of the way that Julia Quinn kind of tackles the love stories for the TV show. So even though most people have an inkling of what they assume is going to happen in season 4, it's possible they'll switch it up again. So that's also something to kind of keep an eye out for if you end up catching up to season 3 and you catch it maybe before they announce it, or even if you're going back to watch and you want to see who they're priming for next season's leads.
It is very cool because you do get a sense, even as early on as I am, you do get a sense of what they may be setting up in the future. And I think, some of it is really prevalent on social media. So if you're coming to the game as late as I am, I guess you could call that some of that a little bit of a spoiler, but I also don't mind it because it actually makes me a little more excited because now I'm getting to see what it is they're setting up. And I understand what all the hubbub is about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good point too. Well, speaking of characters in general, there's so many. This is definitely a good example of an ensemble cast, and we get introduced to quite a few characters even in the first episode alone. I wanted to know, just because I'm curious, who was starting to stand out to you all as early as these first 2 episodes, and if it was Simon and Daphne because they're spearheading it, or if your interests lied elsewhere.
For me, it wasn't those 2. I find some of the other characters far more entertaining and interesting. And I'll talk a little bit about these 2 later, kind of on the suspect list, but I love Lady Danbury as a character, and I love Eloise as a character too. Those 2 are, to me, like in the early episodes, just like their sass and their behavior, their attitude towards other people, make the show very enjoyable to watch.
Micah, you took mine. Those were mine too.
I mean, rewatching Lady Danbury is just so fun. She's just a character. I mean, if I think back to the first time I watched it, I was enthralled with Simon. I thought he was the most beautiful man I have seen. So I loved him, but I think comparing it to season 2, I don't think he's as good an actor as Jonathan Bailey. I love to watch Anthony. I just think he's got so much riz. He kind of pisses me off in this first season, but I think him compared to the second season, it's just so fun to see this journey that he takes.
For me, it was also Eloise, because I just feel like she feels so much, and it's almost like she feels so much she doesn't know how to expel it all. And she's such almost kind of like a nice modern day touchstone to me. She kind of reminds me a lot of Lizzie Bennet from Pride and Prejudice, because she wants something more. And I think that that's probably why it was really easy to gravitate towards her, because she doesn't just want what is expected of her.
Yeah, I agree. And honestly, as a viewer, I kind of felt like, oh, Eloise is the audience, right? Like, even, I don't know if this is how she was in the books, but it very much felt to me like every time I was feeling like I wanted to shout because of stupid societal standards, she was right there doing it. So I really think that in a lot of ways she does stand in for the viewers to be like, what the hell is going on here? But I want to +1 what you said, Natasha, about Simon. Even though he's not my favorite, he's very hot. Like, and I feel like we can't talk about Bridgerton and not talk about the hotness of all of it, because is I was paying attention. I'll just put it that way. I was like, oh my goodness, like the way you said that, let me rewind and listen to that again. He does a good job in that department.
He definitely hooked us that first season.
And I think that they needed somebody like that to sell it, you know, when you're trying to, not that the actress who plays Daphne isn't beautiful, but I think that because if you're making a show that is mostly catered to women, you need somebody who is a leading man who's going to command attention or demand attention.
Oh, yeah.
And they definitely found it in him.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
also, I thought it was really cool that he like was an extra in Harry Potter, so that was like a fun little tie-in that you get seeing.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Around,
yeah, he's in part 1 of Deathly Hallows in the wedding scene with Fleur. Very small bit role.
Look at him now. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the diversity of the cast. This is definitely another one of those reasons why the show piqued interest for a lot of people and got a lot of buzz. Blind casting, when it's done, is always really interesting to me. And when season 1 was coming out, you did hear a lot of the people that were involved in making this show talk about how they were proud of the blind casting that had been done for this series. And it kind of felt like they misspoke a little bit, because usually when blind casting happens, it just means that race plays no part in the roles. And while they were very generous with the way they casted Regency era London, which would not have seen BIPOC actors in titled roles, they also do kind of delve into some race relations. And so taking all of that into consideration, I just wanted to know if you feel like Bridgerton did a good job with this, because I do think there is a right and wrong way to go about crafting a story when you do engage in blind casting.
I do have a lot to say on the subject, because it's not blind casting. There is actually a purpose for it. And I feel like they didn't do a good job in the first season kind of telling us. I remember I had to explain this to a friend of mine, because she was just starting and she's BIPOC, and she's like, is it blind casting? I'm like, actually, no. So Queen Charlotte, historically, actually, it was darker skinned. She was not like full Caucasian. She actually had like African heritage in her.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Shonda just kind of went with that. And it is explained in one scene between Simon and Lady Danbury in the first season of why there are people of BIPOC people of nobility. And then they go into it more in Queen Charlotte and in the second season. So like, if you do, I don't want to spoil it here unless like you want me to, but I think it's a rather, I love what they did, because I've seen so many historical films and TV shows where it is blind casting and it's not explained, because I think it actually gives a purpose and a true meaning to, and actually, you know, we're able to address what we did as a society historically and like what could have been.
Right. Is this purely the case in the show, or is the cast of the books also very diverse? This is something I was wondering, because I know
show.
It's just the show,
because I know nothing about the books. So, okay.
And it was a big deal that they cast a Black man as Simon, and it was a big deal too that they cast Simone Ashley as Kate in season 2.
Mm-hmm.
She's of Indian
Her name's
descent,
totally different. I don't know what it is in the book.
Yeah,
but it's not
Sheffield. Kate Sheffield. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's cool personally. And I think in a lot of ways, and this might kind of get us into your next point here, Pam, but I think Natasha makes a really great point in talking about us sort of grappling with the realities of our history through kind of the prism of how we're representing these stories in different time periods. Like, nobody is coming out and saying that we're rewriting history to say that things were that weren't. That's not really the point of it. And I think there are a lot of ways that we could look at a show like Bridgerton and say that actually inserting modernity into that story amplifies the themes even more and makes it
Shines a light
resonate
on
better. Yeah.
Yeah, because it made me think, because I think Laura earlier, you mentioned Downton Abbey. I can't remember a person of color in that show at all. And I guess, if we're talking about historical accuracy here, that's probably historically accurate for that time period. I guess, and this is a larger question, like, is this a show that's trying to hang its hat on historical accuracy? I don't necessarily think that's its goal in any way, shape, or form.
I agree.
Yeah. And that really gets us nicely into the next point here, which is that because some people like their Regency period pieces to be more historically accurate, a show like Bridgerton has really ruffled some feathers with that sector of fans. Aside from the diversity of the cast, people have also taken issues with the modernity of the costuming, for example, which personally I think is beautiful. And I know Laura talked about how like visually stunning the show is. I think that the costuming really feeds into a lot of that. But also there are some people that cannot get down with the orchestral arrangements that they chose to include
Oh, Lord.
with
Get
the show,
over it.
because they're all like top 40 hits that are, made with strings and stuff. Micah, I feel like you're chomping at the bit to say something. I would love to give you the floor here.
I think this show does a very good job of blending different things together. And I don't think that current music being performed orchestrally takes away at all. Like, I actually think it's a really smart marketing tactic, honestly, to have, top 40 hits in a show like this. Yeah. That's just me.
I agree.
It doesn't bother me at all.
I think so the people who are getting their panties in a twist about the historical accuracy of the costuming is ridiculous, because the silhouettes are actually the proper silhouette of the time. It just has a little bedazzle to it. Like, can we just have a little sparkle? Like, I don't understand, and I think it's perfect. I think it's just accurate enough where it's not a what was that show on the CW?
Rain.
Fuck Rain.
Oh my God, that show. Thank you for saying that. That show is bad.
Free people. Renaissance costumes. I can't. So at least, it's not Rain, and it's not, I don't know. I think it opens up to a broader audience,
Agreed.
and if there are shows there that are historically accurate that you can watch, they're there for you. This is just something that appeals to more people.
I mean, would it have been as upbeat if they were dancing to Beethoven or Mozart? Probably not.
No.
I mean, definitely not. So,
I think the music is so much fun. I love that they decided to do that. And Micah, to your point about it being a smart marketing tactic, I fully agree. This is, again, one of those reasons why the show got so much buzz online, because people were like, oh my God, like, they're dancing to Thank You Next in this ballroom scene. What? Like, what is this? And I think it's really cool. I'm sure they have more artists like banging on the doors to ask to be part of next seasons as a result of this.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think people who want to die on the hill of historical accuracy in stories like this, they're just gatekeeping. That's all it is. It's just gatekeeping. Like, your version of this Regency era romance does not live up to the standards that I think they should live up to. Therefore, it's not worth the time of day. Get out of here. Like, that's not the point. Micah, you said this earlier. That's not the point of this show. It's a good story and it's art.
Yeah. Yeah. I go back to the point of like, it does blend together a lot of different things really well.
Mm-hmm.
And the music is just a bonus. How about that?
Oh, yeah.
Nicely put.
Yeah. Fun fact, Ariana Grande did actually go to set for season 1.
Did she really?
Oh,
I was told this.
Fun.
Yes.
Ooh.
you're like
Was
our
she also
insider
an extra in
source.
Deathly Hallows Part 1?
I feel like she would have been so down for that. Isn't she a huge Harry Potter fan
I
too?
think so.
Probably.
She's a millennial, so aren't we all?
I'm curious though. Like the way I was starting to think about this was, you know how when Shakespeare gets modernized, there's been a couple of movies like that
Mhm.
over the last, I would say, what, like 20 or 30 years.
Anyone but you.
Yeah.
Clueless.
is another one.
Mhm.
This has those kind of vibes for me. Like it may actually be going in the reverse than what bringing it to modern day, but there are modern day elements that are getting inserted into this show.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Actually, it just reminded me of like even taking it to Broadway. Spring Awakening is a good example of a show that blends, like being of a different time with like modern music. Cause it's like kind of a rock musical, but the way they talk is very like 19, early 1900s. So
Mhm. I think it's interesting because it still has the, we still have the marriage mark. We still have, a woman's virginity has to be intact. There's still all those, I guess, rules from back in those days that are still within the show, we still keep the high stakes of these romances, which is why Regency romance is so, I guess, fun for people to read, because we don't have those stakes in modern day time, but they did exist back then. And I think modernizing a few bits of the show keep it relevant, but we still have those high stakes that kind of combat with each other.
Yeah,
That's
well
a really
said.
good point.
all right. Well, last point to discuss here, just for fun. In the series, we obviously know that Julie Andrews lends her voice to Lady Whistledown, but I want to know who everyone thinks is actually hiding behind this name. Wrong answers only, even if you know, even if you've been spoiled.
So part of me had initially wondered if Lady Whistledown was some kind of urban legend, like a mysterious writer who had been chronicling the town's gossip for decades, centuries, which, would be kind of cool if that's what it ended up being, where it's almost like being passed down from one person to the next. But in rewatching these first couple of episodes, I think I mentioned this a little bit earlier. My initial suspicions were with Eloise and Lady Danbury. However, I will say the dinner table joke about Lady Whistledown possibly being a man, writers have a tendency to drop throwaway comments like this only for it to come true later on. And so I guess we'll have to see.
I initially agreed with you. Like I didn't think it was who it was supposed to be. I thought it was someone that we have never even met before. I wasn't a huge fan of Gossip Girl, so I couldn't relate it back to that in my knowledge of it. But I thought it was some like old biddy having fun. I was like, I thought Lady Danbury or Violet Bridgerton, who's the mom. Those were my first few guesses.
How about you, Laura?
So I don't know yet.
Oh, even better.
So take a guess. Or two.
So I don't want to accidentally give a spoiler here. This isn't supposed to be a spoiler, and like not know that I'm giving a spoiler, but I probably don't know. I've been thinking about the Gossip Girl connection the entire time. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll
Okay.
see how that.
You can tell us once we wrap.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
once we
will,
recording.
wrap.
I will
Yeah.
text
And then-
y'all
And then
be
you
like,
can
oh
tell
my
us
God.
if you and then you can tell us if you want us to tell you yes or no.
No,
Okay.
you should know.
Oh, she should find out organically like the
Yes.
rest of us. It will make for a better experience.
Well, no, I'm literally going back to watch more after we finish recording this. So that's what I
So then
mean.
you really do have to text us.
I will text y'all and be like, oh my God, I can't believe it. Or I was totally wrong. We'll see.
It's actually interesting because in the books, again, I've never read them, but I just know a lot about it. Lady Whistledown was not revealed, I think, until like very future, like book 3, 4, or 5, like one of those. I think it's like book 5. I think you go the whole time without knowing who Lady Whistledown is.
Wow.
Yeah, it's something like that. I've only read the 4th book for obvious reasons. So reasons will be obvious to Natasha.
Yes.
But so
maybe we can talk about this in
Is that
another
one
episode.
spicy?
no, it's literally because I just wanted to know more about Colin and Penelope. And that's their book. And so I was like, I need to know what happens. So I read it, and that's the only one I've read.
Maybe
What were you
we
going to say,
can,
Micah?
yeah, maybe we can talk about this in a future episode, but I'm curious why they chose to reveal Lady Whistledown's identity early on.
Yeah, that would be a good discussion, because I do think it's interesting that they chose to do that. And any other show would not have, but they clue the audience in really early.
Yeah.
I think I know Shonda gave a reason, but I can't remember what it was. Maybe because they didn't know if they're going to get a second season, and they wanted to kind of get the audience more tuned in.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
And at least give some closure just in case they didn't get a second.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, my guess is Genevieve, the modiste, because we get that great montage of her gossiping with Violet Bridgerton in episode 2, and she must know all the hot goss. All right. Well, let's start wrapping things up here. And in order to kick things off in terms of doing that, I wanted to start by asking you all if Bridgerton is worth the hype. So I think the good place to start maybe would be with Laura, since you're our newbie here. You've made it very clear that you're getting ready to watch more. So are you going to be like binging up a storm after we hang up here?
Oh yeah, no, I've been watching the clock as we've gone through, and I'm loving talking to y'all about this, but I'm also like, okay, like I want to go watch more Bridgerton. I've literally been so my boyfriend usually games at night, and usually I'm hanging out because I'm a gamer too and I want to game with him. But for the last couple of nights, I've just been bringing my laptop out and sitting on the couch, and he'll be playing Destiny and I will be watching some very spicy stuff on the computer, and occasionally he'll look over and be like, oh. And I'm like, you're fine. Keep playing your game. You're good. So yeah, that's what I'll be doing after this.
Nice. Micah, how about you? You said that you've watched maybe the first 2 seasons, right? Are you interested in keeping up with the show now that we've talked through a bunch of it?
Yeah, I'm energized. I'm like the music, I'm ready to go but I think I'm definitely going to have to rewatch the first 2 seasons again. I think that, it's been a while since I've sat down with the show. So kind of in preparation for season 3, I do feel like I need to get caught up on the storylines. Obviously I know some of the larger plot points, but I'm sure there's things that I'm definitely forgetting that are going to come into play in the 3rd season. But I just think, I can't remember who recommended it to me initially, but I'm somebody who will always at least try out a show and give it a shot, like watch the first 2 or 3 episodes. And I feel like if people are on the, they're wavering a bit, just give it a shot. See if you like it.
Nice.
Do you like all the romance in it? Is that what draws you in, or what's like the main drawing point for you?
I would say, well, now, I mean, the mystery's over, so maybe that's why I kind of felt. I know, but I will say, I do like anything that's really set in London historically. And I've watched a lot of different mystery shows over the years based there. So I guess I'm going to have to find something else to hook me in. Maybe there's another kind of plot point that will draw me in as I rewatch season 2 and head into season 3. Obviously, the big mystery has been revealed, but I'm curious to see how that plays out, like what the fallout is from it.
I think you're going to like season 3 then.
All right.
Good foreshadowing. No, but it's cool that you were down to coming out with us, because I think that, like on the surface level, Bridgerton, it kind of feels like it's marketed very much towards women, but that doesn't mean that, men can't enjoy the show too. And it's cool to get, like the straight male perspective as well. And it's good. It's a good show for anyone. We're proof of that.
Agreed.
Well, with that in mind, who would we say Bridgerton is for? I feel like Bridgerton is definitely for you if you like romance, but also historical romance.
Mystery.
Anybody else want to take a stab? Mystery. All right.
I feel like I have to throw that in there.
I think anyone who's watched a Shonda Rhimes show is going to like this.
Yeah.
It's just good writing.
Good looking people. I think we threw that out.
I know. Everyone's so beautiful.
It's stupid how beautiful they are.
I know.
And I think something that you can just enjoy and you don't have to think too much. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I do, because I think there's something to be said for like leisurely viewing that isn't going to leave you feeling too heavy. There's some drama, there's some sad moments, but it's not, as heavy as like a true crime doc or, something that like, even like Game of Thrones can be really heavy sometimes. And all of that stuff is really binge worthy, but this is binge worthy in a different way.
Yeah. Like Ripper Street is an example of one of those, London era dramas that, or a mystery series that I watched, like way heavier than this show is.
Oh yeah. Matthew McFadden, isn't that? He's Mr. Darcy.
Mr. Darcy. So a few more titles here. If you're maybe interested in picking Bridgerton up, Bridgerton is for you if you like titles like Pride and Prejudice, literally any iteration. Also The Buccaneers, which just came out earlier this year on Apple TV+. I would say also The Gilded Age on HBO Max. The Great, which is now over, but that was over on Hulu. And also Gossip Girl, either season, the new iteration or the original.
I can't believe they remade that, because I work right across the street from the main building that they always showed the outside of. Do you know what I'm talking about? I'll send you a picture.
Well, I know that they're always sitting on the stairs of the Met. Do you work across from the Met?
No.
Okay.
You'll recognize it when I send it to you.
All right.
People are always taking pictures. It's like a hotel, but I think it was one of their...
the school that they use.
Yeah, I'll Google it while we're...
Oh, man. Yeah, honestly, talk about making me feel old. Like, they remade Gossip Girl, and didn't they also redo Pretty Little Liars?
Yes.
And I'm like, that is not old.
Wait, they redid it? Or is it like
Or they rebooted it?
It's on Max. It's a reboot. And I hate to say this, but like from what I saw of the new season, it's actually not bad. I just also agree that we could have waited a bit longer to reboot Pretty Little Liars.
Watch, in like 10 years, they'll be like, let's remake Bridgerton. And Natasha will be like, no, it is art. It is perfection. Leave it alone.
I hope that they continue on with like the Queen Charlotte timeline, because we get to see the Queen as someone, as a young woman. And then we also get to see Lady Danbury as a young woman. And then also Violet, who she actually has her own book that Julia Quinn wrote. So I really want to see her romance with her husband. That's what I hope that they do.
That would be great. More fodder for more installments of our Bridgerton series here on What the Hype.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, 100%. I definitely want to come back and talk about it again once I'm a little deeper into the series, a little more informed.
Yeah.
This is a fun experiment. I love this.
I know. Yeah. It feels crazy because I'm coming in being like, I know like half of the stuff from this season. Some other stuff is still question marks for me, but I think I'm probably going to finish the season tonight. So I'll let y'all know how it goes.
Please do. We're waiting with bated breath.
12:01.
Am I going to be screaming? Like, am I going to be screaming when this wraps?
Maybe.
No.
Maybe.
I feel like I was like freaking out when they revealed it. So you might be too.
Okay. I'm so excited.
Yeah, we're excited for you. And if you do want to join us for future installments of our Bridgerton series here on What the Hype, you'll be able to do that. So keep an eye out because we do have a few more installments planned here. Natasha, thank you so much for joining us. As a superfan, you really kind of helped put a lot of things into perspective. And I know that any of the newbies listening will also really appreciate your insight.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, if I can talk about Bridgerton every day, I'll be a happy lady.
And you'll also be back for episode 2 as well. I've already tapped you in for that. But in the meantime, can you remind us where listeners can find you online if they want to keep up with you?
Yeah, I am Tasha Polis or Tasha Polis everywhere on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Twitter /X, Pinterest. Yeah, and I'm also on Those Forking Fangirls, which is a show that I do with my best friend Christine Riccio, and we're also Those Forking Fangirls on Instagram and Twitter and TikTok.
And of course, thanks to our listeners for listening. We're a new show, so we need your support. First of all, follow us in your favorite podcasting app and leave a review. This is going to help make the show a success. And it's super important in the early days of the show. As I used to say on another podcast, nothing less than 5 stars is acceptable.
Micah's going to come get you if you don't leave us a 5-star review. So be careful. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media. We're on TikTok, YouTube, Twitch, and Instagram as What the Hype Podcast. Our website is whatthehypepodcast.com. And on X, we are What the Hype Show because What the Hype Podcast wasn't available. If you want to email us about anything, you can do that at whatthehypepodcast@gmail.com.
Finally, does a friend or family member need an introduction to Bridgerton or want to learn more? If so, please share this episode with a friend and tell them we're walking through every aspect of pop culture each and every week. So it's not just Bridgerton around these parts as much as we would like it to be. We've got some fun stuff coming down the pipeline, and we'd love for you to join us for those fandoms as well. And that is the hype, as Andrew likes to say. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.